All right, so we've got a bit of a cacophony of
What a
sounds here.
landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, it's wild. So this is there are multiple species calling here.
I'm assuming you wanted me to pick out the sort of one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Do you recognize the other one? It's not the
No.
Alright, well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you the other one as a clue. The other one is northern sheepfrog. The one that sounds like a sheep
Sheepfrog, huh?
is a northern sheepfrog.
If only I could remember anything about the northern sheepfrog.
Can't remember where they're from, no? It's the States. It's the States.
It is the States, but like southern US, I feel.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. At least they are definitely from southern US. But that
What could be down there?
So, any ideas, Ben? I'll give you a clue. Another clue. It's a toad. You like toads?
I do like toads, but that doesn't mean that I have exceptional knowledge of toads. What sort of toads do they have down? Is it one of those desert toads, like one of those Saharan toads?
Sonoran.
Sonoran,
desert
that's the
toad.
word. That's the ticket.
No, it's not a Sonoran desert toad. Good guess though. We'll put you out of your misery here. This was the call of the Mexican burrowing toad, Rhinophrynus dorsalis. They're the
Okay.
ones. They're really funny looking. They're the ones that have the like little pointy nose and the really fat globular bodies. They're described
yeah,
as
yeah,
globular,
yeah.
as a globular species,
Got like
and
a
they
sort
have
of
these.
rain frog like lifestyle, yeah?
I think so. Yeah, they're mostly underground. They're super like burrowy, and they burrow backwards with their hind feet. They sort of like dig little holes with their back feet and reverse into the holes. And yeah, they really only come out of the ground during the rainy season. And they just have funny pointed faces. That's the main reason that they're
That's why you picked
noteworthy.
them, right?
Well, no. So this was actually sent to me, this call, by Brandon
Excellent.
Barassa. So
Oh,
thanks very much, Brandon. And Brandon said, I have a good toad call for you to stump Ben, if you're interested. I had the opportunity to witness an explosive breeding event of Mexican burrowing toads, Rhinophrynus dorsalis, in
excellent.
Rio Grande City, Texas, earlier this year. Definitely the weirdest amphibians I've ever seen, yet strangely adorable and hilarious to watch. Agreed. They are hilarious. And Brandon also said there are some northern sheepfrogs calling in there as well, just so that might throw him off. You know,
Yeah,
didn't
that's what it was.
I used it as a clue because I was feeling generous, Brandon, but it didn't help him. So it's still 3-2 to me, Ben. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still winning.
It'll
Yeah,
remain
I
that
feel
way
like
for a good long time.
indeterminate period. Yeah. So that was a good one though. Yeah, thanks Brandon for sending that in. So yeah, we decided this episode, as we said, it's episode 209. I don't know if I did say that, but it's episode 209. And we decided we'd do like a bit of a mixed bag, talk about a few different sort of things
Nature
which maybe
notes.
didn't on their own constitute episodes.
Yeah.
A few little sort of tidbits from the world of herpetology that have come out. All right, recent stuff. So let's move to the first one. We're sticking in the world of amphibians here. We've got a short note, and I'm not going to do all the authors because we're doing loads of papers, but it's by Angiolani Larrea et al. 2023, and the reference is on our show notes. Egg burying behaviour in Pristimantis highlights the link between direct development and specialised parental care.
I don't think we've covered many Pristimantis papers at all. I think they've usually come up as species of the bi-week previously, because there's an outrageous number of them.
Yeah, apparently it's the genus which has the record for the most species in any tetrapod genus. So anything that has or had four legs, even beats Anolis, yeah. And fish are tetrapods, right? So
allegedly,
even fish genera don't have more than 600 species, which is crazy numbers. We're talking about one called Pristimantis chocoensis, Choco's robber frog, which is named after the biogeographic region of Choco, which is like southern Nicaragua to northwestern Ecuador. So we're in sort of like central into South America here. And yeah, like I said, really speciose genus, over 600. Some of the Pristimantis species are called rain frogs, some are called rubber frogs, and some, like this one, are called robber frogs. And apparently the names are all onomatopoeic references to their calls. They're nothing to do with how they look or their behaviour. So
whether they steal
frogs,
stuff, yeah.
I was hoping that it would be they were like notorious thieves, you know, but apparently not the case.
That would have been fun, but if they were, what would they be stealing?
What do frogs want, you know?
Yeah, that's my question. The others
bugs,
have
grubs. Yeah, there aren't many animals that sort of store resources that frogs would be after. Like there's no major bug storage facilities in the natural kingdom that I know of.
Maybe it would be a stealing nesting site thing, a sort of evicting other creatures from prime bromeliads or something along those lines.
Yeah, or I could see it being a situation where the frogs were like stealing the young of another animal. So maybe like it was sort of a nice nest of termites or something, and the robber frogs came along and burgled all the babies or something like that. But yeah, not the case. Apparently they're cool. It just sounds like robber. Which I don't have an example of, so we won't know this time. But yeah, these frogs are unusual. They're direct developing, right? So this is an evolutionary strategy where instead of laying eggs which hatch into sort of tadpoles or a larval stage, and usually in water, and doing the whole metamorphosis thing, these frogs and many other species lay eggs which develop straight into froglets and hatch out as these sort of miniature frogs. So it's a more traditional egg to young sort of approach rather than egg to larval stage to non-larval stage.
I guess it's more traditional. I don't know.
I don't know which came first. Is probably actually the larval stage, right? I don't know because
I have no idea because like both make sense in different environments, right? So
fish, what are fish doing? Fish kind of just come out small, but then they're called larvae, so it's a bit of a grey area. They don't really metamorphose; they just grow. So it's a bit of a weird one. But anyway, frogs, they've evolved this strategy numerous times independently. So this laying eggs and having them develop into frogs has evolved a bunch of times. It keeps appearing in amphibians because it's useful. Like it's handy if you can just ditch your eggs somewhere and then not have to worry about them, rather than having larvae which are going to have to sort of evolve to live in water. You just lay an egg and it turns into a frog. So these ones, and this is why this paper's kind of been published, is because there's some new observations on how they actually go about this. And so there is a video of these sort of frogs, and it's a male and a female, and it's unclear. Yeah. So we're in where does this paper actually exactly take place? I know the species is between Nicaragua to Ecuador, but this is
South America. That's not very specific.
Pair of these frogs, and they're in a hole.
Rio Can Dairy Reserve.
In country
it does
of
not say Ecuador.
Ecuador.
Sorry,
okay,
Ecuador.
Yeah. So they found these frogs on the kind of the forest floor, and they are in a hole. It's unclear whether they dug the hole. It's quite an impressive hole. So
although they have evidence of mud on their feet.
So there's a smoking gun suggesting they might have
dug
the hole. They probably did dig the hole. They're quite big. They could probably dig. They look like they could dig quite well.
Yeah.
And then the male and the female frog, the male gets on the female. They do amplexus. The female lays eggs. The male appears to fertilize them. And then after that, the female kind of like rolls the eggs around in the mud and gets them nice and mucky. And then, they cover them over in a nice little depression that they've sort of created in the ground there. And it's just a magical thing. They've left their eggs, and hopefully they'll survive on the forest floor.
Yes,
and
they don't just leave,
the first time.
Right, you're making it sound like they can cover them up and just leave, but they don't. They hang around for a bit, for a couple of nights. I think it's a couple of nights. One night, certainly.
Yeah, they did. They stayed around for at least a day.
And then they move off, which is a bit different from some other direct developing frogs that the adults just leave immediately.
Yeah, so they don't just spray and pray. They do lay eggs, sit around for a bit. They could have just been tired.
They could have just been tired, exactly, not guarding. Like, it's hard to really say that was what that behaviour was.
That's like someone's asleep on the sofa.
It could be.
He's guarding it. So, that's some new evidence for Pristimantis frogs being direct developing. And look at, there's a video with this, and the female really whips those eggs around. It's a lovely motion. So, we've got another paper here. We're moving from the world of frogs to lizards. This one is by Liang et al. 2024. Report of abnormal tail regeneration of Eremias yarkandensis and its locomotor performance.
It's very reminiscent of the alligator weirdness we covered a while back, where
that was fun.
An individual has not entirely lost. I mean, in that case, it was sort of damage and like incomplete removal of tail, and then this sort of new, quite odd-looking scar tissue-like growth emits from the tail to the point of them having these sort of two tail aspects sticking out at the very end, and this is basically the same again, but less crocodilian and more lizardy.
Yeah, so like there are quite a few times where this can happen. You do see pictures of quite a few geckos with it, but it's called tail bifurcation. So you get, if you're a lizard, you have sort of muscles which kind of form almost like a little sphincter really, and they're on the tail. They're special muscles, and they mean that you can basically just plop your tail off at any given moment. It's a defense mechanism. Sometimes it will happen if the lizard is grabbed, the tail will come off. Otherwise, sometimes it's just the lizard is scared and it decides it's going to pinch its tail off. Some snakes can do it too. There's like a bunch of Central and South American colubrids that can do it. There's definitely some in Southeast Asia that can do it too. And so it's a useful adaptation. It's quite common just to like drop your tail, and then the tail tends to sort of wiggle around and look quite curious. I myself have personally been distracted by these tails. Sometimes you just see one on the floor.
That's weird when you're walking through the forest and you just come across the tail and nothing else, and it's still wiggling, and you're like, oh well, something happened here. It's like
instinctively
reasonably
in your mouth. Yeah. But it's it's
snack.
very strange. It looks like a caterpillar or something wiggling around. It's very eye catching. It really like
it is,
sort of
yeah.
Moves around in a very jerky kind of way. Very distracting, and it works. It works for predation. But sometimes with tails, some lizards the tail grows back. Some lizards the tail doesn't grow back. Like the lizards from the geckos from New Caledonia, none of them grow back. Crested geckos, gargoyle geckos, their tails don't grow back. But most times if a lizard's tail comes off, it will grow back in some form or another, usually in like a sort of less jazzy, grayer, sort of more
muted,
more unappealing.
Yeah.
Unappealing, muted. They look strange and they don't have nice colour patterns like the original tails. And then sometimes something's even stranger. What will happen is the tail will break off, but maybe it will break off incompletely, which triggers the growth of a new tail. But the other tail's still there, still has a little bit of a blood supply, still has nerve endings potentially going to it. And so you end up with this two-pronged tail that we call bifurcated. Bifurcated just means two prongs. And so this is a case of that here in a lizard which is commonly known as the Yarkend race runner, Eremias yarkandensis.
Yeah.
And these people were trying to work out if it can run properly and do all the stuff that a normal lizard can do.
The alligator crocodile one we covered, do you remember whether there were any comment on the sort of tail's performance for swimming and things? Or was that just sort of discussed as a potential... this is probably really good because they can still swim if they have a sort of regrown tail sort of thing.
I think they discussed it like that. Yeah,
there wasn't any testing.
Tails are useful. Yeah, there wasn't any testing. I don't think there was any testing of the one that had a split.
No.
But this one, they looked to see if it could run properly. So they put it on along with a bunch of its other lizard colleagues who did have normal tails, they put this female lizard which had the split tail, the double tail, through its paces, running around, getting it to sprint, seeing what its stamina was like.
And a little bit more controlled than that. They sort of poked it with a brush at one end and timed how long it went across this sort of gridded area and recorded it. Yeah.
with the old scientific hairbrush, got it out of the cupboard.
Just poke it on the end there.
So yeah, I mean, they only had like 10 or something lizards, and they were all kind of broadly similar in their speed and athleticism, right? This one with the double tail didn't really stand out as being slow or unable to keep up for periods of time.
It was running about 2 to 1.4 meters a second, depending on the substrate it was given. The other individuals were going 1.6 to 1.3 meters per second, depending on the substrate.
So, a bit slower than normal, but not badly.
A bit faster than normal.
Oh, a bit faster than normal. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I just remember looking and it seemed sort of like in the middle somewhere, maybe. But
I mean, yes, exactly. Its lows are well within the sort of overall range of the ones without the bifurcated tail, but its high is also higher than them. But that doesn't,
So a little twist in the tail here, that having a double tail doesn't really slow you down, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I guess this lizard probably wouldn't be sticking around if it was that major of an impediment. And they did say they see it like basking and going back into its hole and stuff. The reasons why a tail like this could be beneficial, and the authors sort of mused on this in the paper, it might increase the chances of deflecting a predatory attack towards the tail because it's a larger target. It's probably more noticeable as well if it's double pronged. It makes me think of that spider-tailed viper with the crazy spider at the end of its tail. I mean, that thing's gone all the way full bore. That's the most insane, distracting thing. But this is kind of the first step on the way to that, which is kind of cool. Like, it's probably a bit more distracting for the predators. But also, the tail in lizards serves a function of storing nutrients and food reserves, so fat. So,
double storage.
Having a double prong, presumably. I mean, the second prong of this lizard isn't as impressive as the other tail.
Well, we don't see this. We don't actually know how well connected either of them are, right? There might be a case that one's sort of not getting as much blood as it should, and therefore things are sort of limited in terms of its use in that way.
They did say that during the study they didn't feed the lizard for a couple of days, and the sort of smaller tail started to look a bit ropey after that. So maybe it's not as good as a normal tail in some way. Maybe it's slightly less well connected, but either way, it could potentially serve as this additional place to store food reserves, which could be useful for the lizard. So yeah, there we go. The Yarkand race runner has a bifurcated tail, and the authors are like, we need to test more lizards and make them run when they have a double tail. So keep an eye out for double tail lizard, and definitely try and get them jogging if you do find one. So let's move on again. We got another paper. This time, I didn't realise we'd done this, Ben, but we've done the triple whammy. We've gone from an amphibian to a lizard to a snake.
Ah, but no turtles.
No turtles, sadly.
Crocodiles.
Let's go on to this snake. So this one's by Park et al. 2024. The first record of leucism in the Rhabdophis tigrinus in South Korea, published in Ecology and Evolution. So this is Rhabdophis tigrinus, one of the keelback snakes, and this is a famous species because it's one of only a few snakes which is both venomous and poisonous. They
eating up toads to sequester their toxins that they can then what's the right word?
Sequester.
no, they can release it via glands on the back of their neck.
Yeah, isn't that sequestration where they store it?
Well, that would be the storing bit, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but
I wanted the word for the
squirting.
Yeah, but that's too much. Say. It's more like it's much less dramatic
oozing?
than that. Yeah, oozing. Oozing's a good word, but it's still not the one I'm looking
Oozing's a good word, yeah, definitely. But yeah, so Rhabdophis tigrinus, it's known as the tiger keelback. It's this venomous snake. Natricinae is the subfamily, so it's related to things like grass snakes and water snakes and stuff.
Hence its appetite for soggy amphibians and fish-like things.
Yeah, and this one was no different. They found these snakes in kind of a, I guess they're kind of like ponds in agricultural areas, aren't they? Is where they've been looking for them. Yeah, and it sounds like they were doing a study on this species, and they're normally sort of green and black with sort of red stripes near the neck, which are beautiful snakes. But these authors managed to find one which has got what they're calling leucism, which is essentially no green or black pigment anywhere on the snake. It still has the kind of like pinky purples and reds and yellows.
Yeah.
But no green or black. And curiously, it has a black eye, which I guess is why leucism, not amelanism, because amelanism is no black pigment.
Yeah.
Which is a weird one. It's a strange mutation that this snake's got, but it's really a beautiful snake. I mean, it's sort of yellow with, sort of like pinky lilac-y patches and like pinky lilac-y bits near the head. It's very striking. You would think it would get munched by a bird, really, looking like that.
You would, but maybe that's why it's been found in some agriculture. Maybe its predators are largely absent. Or it's just got lucky.
Yeah, and it's not an adult, is it? It's
No.
It's a slightly less than adult-sized snake, so it hasn't quite sort of made progress to adulthood.
Yes, not
yet saying
fully
it won't.
mature. Yeah.
It is something which people always say, like, you know, albino or amelanistic, or in this case, leucistic snakes don't survive in the wild. And I mean, logically, they probably are much less well camouflaged, but never say never.
I don't know. I think they hint at something quite interesting in the paper too, is that it might be the case that their survival's reasonably sort of context specific. Like we covered that viper morph paper a while ago, and that was trying to draw patterns between, well, the opposite of this sort of the very melanistic snakes and potentially benefits for thermal regulation and things like that allowed them to live in certain areas at higher frequencies than other color morphs and things. So there could be all sorts of things acting on this snake, and one of the ones they do hint at is potentially a lower efficiency for thermoregulation, the lack of melanism being a problem for them, and they're potentially more limited ability to get themselves warmed up.
Yeah. I guess South Korea is not. It's not boiling hot, but it is hot, isn't it? So.
I think it's pretty seasonal, right?
Strong seasonality.
36 degrees north. What's this one? Yeah, snakes found about 35 degrees north, so that's going to have some pretty sizable seasonality, right?
So yeah, I could see it being a problem. So these snakes, the reason they're poisonous and venomous is because they have venom in the mouth glands, the venomous glands, which normal place for colibris to have venom, and they also have it in what are called the nuchal glands in the dorsal skin of the neck. And there are cases of people getting sprayed with this venom from the neck, or poison from the neck.
Sprayed?
Yeah, there's a paper back in 2014. This guy is described as the patient was a 40-year-old man whose right eye was sprayed by the nuchal gland fluid of Rhabdophis
tigrinus. So maybe spray is the correct word. I was under the impression that it didn't have that much momentum.
I've never seen one actually spray. I thought you had to like nibble on them to get it to come out of the glands on the neck.
I think they have a sort of defensive posture which puts pressure on the glands to get it to sort of come out. That was the impression I was operating under.
Like the beginnings of a hood, kind of squeezing.
Yeah, maybe. I can't remember exactly how it's described. There's a paper that goes into their defensive behaviours in quite some detail, but I forget how they describe it.
Well, this is a case report here. So this was a 40-year-old man presented to the emergency department 10 hours after being sprayed in the right eye by the nuchal gland secretion of a snake that was later identified as Rhabdophis tigrinus. This guy worked and lived at a high mountain farm in central Taiwan. He saw the culprit at his house and tried to catch it with his bare hands. Ooh, big moves. Foolish. When his right hand was in close proximity to the snake, the patient noticed fluid spraying out from the snake's neck and subsequently felt the fluid in his right eye. He managed to catch the snake and put it in a canvas bag. Wow, he wasn't put off. To bring to the hospital. In spite of immediate profuse irrigation with tap water, the patient suffered foreign body sensation, progressive burning pain, and blurred vision. Eventually, he didn't have antivenom administered, but it was fine in the end. He turned out okay.
I'm not sure if anti-venom would make any difference, right? Because it's not the venom.
No, it would need to be anti-poison.
And yeah, anti-toxin. I suppose you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and 5 days later his eyesight was back to normal, so not that bad. I just find it funny that he's like catching the snake, squeezing the snake sprayed something in his eye. He's like, he's got to get into this bag. Keep going, don't be put off. Even if an animal uses all of its potentially deadly.
Well, I mean, in for a penny at that point, right?
For a penny, for a pound. See if this thing will bite me as well. But there you go. Pretty cool that there's been a leucistic one found. It's always fun to see wild reptiles with crazy colours. And yeah, good luck to this little snake is all I can say, because it's probably going to be marginally more complicated life for it.
I would suspect so.
Cool. All right. Well, there we go. A little trio of new happenings in the world of herpetology. Have you got any other business for this week, Ben?
No, I don't. That's all me. Just these cool nature notes and some fascinating little behaviours and a really cool looking snake.
Yeah. Well, I haven't either. So all that remains to be said is if you want to get in touch with us, you can. herphighlights@gmail.com if we've made any mistakes, or if you want to ask us a question or just get in touch. You can support the podcast on patreon.com/herphighlights. And yeah, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, herp_highlights. You can find me, Tom_E_major. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.